and fitness blogger Molly McLaren is stabbed multiple times as she returns to her car after a morning gym session. Police quickly arrive on the scene and discover her ex-boyfriend Joshua Stimpson nearby, covered in blood and holding a knife in his hand.
He doesn't care whether anybody sees. It's not about getting away with it, it's about killing her. That's the key.
The dominant emotions was rage and jealousy, and that was a fatal cocktail.
That overwhelming jealousy that he had, that she was carrying on without him, that she didn't love him anymore, drove him to murder.
This was her first real relationship, and it was the relationship that killed her.
Kent, in the southeast of England, is an affluent area located close to the City of London.
When people consider England and people say the word Kent, most people would just want to move there. It's got the coastal experience, it's got the urban experience, it's a collision of everything that's beautiful in the UK.
It's aspiring middle-class people with good jobs, young, probably with kids, and mums looking for gyms and general good living.
Has about 1.8 million people who reside there, but it also suffers with quite a high crime rate, from the very serious cases of murders through to what you would see in town centres where fights break out.
But one horrific incident in a car park in Chatham in July 2017 sent shockwaves throughout the community. 23-year-old university student Molly McLaren was returning to her car after an early morning gym session when she was shockingly and brutally attacked by an ex-boyfriend, 26-year-old Joshua Stimpson.
Molly left the gym, got to her car, opened the door, sat down. The next thing she would have known was the passenger side door open, and suddenly he was there. And he was in the seat next to her, he had a knife, and he attacked her.
26-year-old Joshua Stimpson, a double glazing salesman originally from Stoke-on-Trent but now living in the Kent area, had been in a relationship with Molly for 6 months before she broke up with him in April of that year.
It's very unusual for a crime of this nature to take place. It's at the most serious of crimes that we ever see. And in the nature in which it was done as well, in public, for so many people to see, and the brutality that was seen in this crime, makes it very unusual and very rare.
A member of the public who tries to intervene to help can't even pull him out. Even when he's slamming the door and his legs trying heroically to remove him from that car, he can't do it.
Multiple 999 calls are going into the police around what is happening. People obviously incredibly upset. The police are rushing there as quickly as they can.
First responders arrive at the car park where they observe an agitated young man in blood-soaked clothing with a knife in his hand.
The police couldn't believe it when they arrived because, bear in mind, most perpetrators leave the scene of a crime in this circumstance, but that's not what occurs. He's pacing up and down.
Standing there in his white vest and his black shorts, covered in blood, almost waiting for the police to arrive.
And then he says, "I killed her." So he knows he's going to get caught. It wasn't about putting up a fight. It was just about doing what he set out to do, which was to execute her in cold blood.
Joshua Stimpson is arrested and taken into custody. Detectives begin investigating the sequence of events leading up to the attack, starting with finding out more about 23-year-old victim Molly McLaren.
They could see that she'd had a gym kit and that she'd clearly been in the gym, and it wasn't long before they were able to piece together who the suspect was, who was covered in blood.
Molly McLaren is one of those individuals, when you think about a family background, that most people would want to experience.
Molly grew up in the quiet village of Cobham in East Kent amongst a close circle of family and friends. Molly was especially close to her mother and confided in her throughout her childhood and adolescent years.
Her mother and her were considered best friends. There was nothing that her mother wouldn't do for her, and Molly felt the same. And it wasn't just about that family dynamic, it's the wider dynamic, because you have to think about family not just being a bloodline, it's about the friends that you have around you.
Health and fitness was her big passion in life. She also thought it was very important that other people were motivated by health and fitness as well.
Molly was in her second year at the University of Kent studying health and fitness, so she was really dedicated not just to her own health and fitness, but to a career investing in others' health and fitness too.
She also starts blogging about her health and fitness journey and quickly gains an online following.
Her main love in life was the inspirational blog that she would run, all to do with fitness, fitness tips, and health food suggestions. This was a brilliant success for her. She had many followers, and fitness and health was her top priority.
She had quite a big online presence. She had Instagram, where she would do fitness videos for people to try and motivate them.
She was using it firstly because she looks amazing. So there's something really beautiful about the photographs that she's posting, but also the little videos that she was doing. It's inspirational.
But Molly's interest in health and fitness has its roots in a darker period from her childhood.
Molly, throughout her young life, suffered from bulimia, and she also had problems with anxiety. As she saw it, it's a way to help her through those times.
She did struggle as she was growing up, like lots of young girls do. She struggled with her self-image, she had some mental health problems, an eating disorder.
These issues she'd had when younger, she'd come to terms with and conquered, and was part of how she tackled her new fitness and health regime.
You're growing up at a time right now where everything is about the way that you look. What Molly was doing was figuring a way forward with that, and she was using her experiences of a platform for change for others to see, you know, it's possible to overcome, it's possible to show your vulnerabilities, and it's possible to help others realize that they can achieve the same.
Towards the end of 2016, Molly is starting to achieve the goals she had set for herself. And there was another part of her life that she wanted to explore for the first time.
Molly was an individual who hadn't actually had long-term relationships. You know, boys were not a big part of her radar, and part of that is because she had a really great life with her family. Secondly, she was aware of her own issues. And when you've got issues about self-image, you don't necessarily want to be in relationships because you've got to battle those demons. But also when you're overcoming those issues, what a relationship can do is destabilize you. So I think that she was getting to a point where the foundations were set and she was ready.
During her second year at university, Molly begins to explore the world of online dating.
Online dating is obviously incredibly popular nowadays, but it does come with certain dangers to it. The person that you're in conversation with, which can be for many weeks and months before you actually meet them, might be displaying a different personality to what they really are. They might be a very different person altogether.
She went on the internet, she went on Tinder, because that's where the average person meets somebody that they can relate to and connect with, and that's exactly what she did.
Molly met Stimson on the Tinder dating app. She was flicking through it and found what looked a really good-looking boy.
She wanted to find the right person. At the time when she was at university, this would be somebody that she wanted to be part of her friendship group as well. And so Molly eventually finds somebody that is compatible for her.
Joshua Stimpson, a 25-year-old double glazing salesman from nearby Rochester, appears to be the perfect match for fitness-conscious Molly.
He was somebody that presents as having had struggles, being an individual who's vulnerable, and bear in mind, that is super attractive to somebody else who has been in that situation.
Molly is aware of the potential dangers of online dating.
She begins talking, but only on text and over the phone for about 3 or 4 months, just to get to know her. That's the kind of personality that she was.
This wasn't a whirlwind online dating romance. They discussed for some 4 months between themselves, finding out about each other, before 4 months later they met for the first time face to face.
And it's at that point that she feels that she has met the right person, because they share a love of fitness. He also talks about suffering from mental health problems themselves, so they share something there as well that they can talk about. And so they found that, you know, perhaps this was the right match for her.
He's a really good looking guy. So from the outside looking in, you're thinking, this could work. They look like they'd really connect. They look like they would really fit on a looks level. And so that, in this day and age, is your first port of call. How do they present to the world? Well, they presented very effectively.
Molly and Stimpson now begin a romantic relationship, and she introduces him for the first time to her family and friends.
He came over, as her family said, very much as a nice lad. He seemed a decent man, interested and loving her, and they had a bond between them.
Molly introduces this new partner to her friends, and it isn't long before we start to see what looks like coercive and controlling behaviour.
You could have a relationship online for quite some time before you get to the meeting stage. And that can be quite dangerous because you don't know who that person really is and what they're really like. It's only when you meet them and they're actually starting to interact properly that you're going to get the non-fake person.
It's at this point in their relationship that Stimpson's behaviour towards Molly starts to change.
He starts to try and take her away from her friendship group, bombarding her with texts, saying wherever she goes, he wants to be as well. So not giving her the space to have the other part of her life where she's just out with friends enjoying herself and relaxing.
From the get-go, I think she was realising this is too intense. He seems to be too familiar with me on a level where he feels he can control me right from the early days. But everybody wants to give somebody a chance, particularly if you've not had relationships before. What have you got to relate it to and compare it to? So initially, she's probably thinking, you know, let's give it some time.
But family and friends of Molly McLaren are starting to have real concerns around new boyfriend Joshua Stimpson, and the relationship between the couple is about to take a turn for the worse. Kent, 2017. 23-year-old university student and fitness blogger Molly McLaren has begun a new relationship with 26-year-old double glazing salesman Joshua Stimpson. Molly met Stimpson on an online dating app only months earlier, but already there are concerns about his controlling and abusive behaviour towards her.
I genuinely think that where Molly is concerned, there were always some misgivings from the get-go. I think Stimpson was somebody who couldn't hide his true self very easily. I think his jealousy and his aggressive tendencies, which were passive initially, were such that it was unavoidable to notice. I also think that Molly was somebody who had a level of empathy, and also she was somebody who picked up on the vibes that were not positive.
Molly could sense that she was not being treated as an equal partner in life. That Stimpson thought that he should be in control of her, that he should own her, that she was a possession. Well, of course, she was a very bright, intelligent, independent woman, more than capable of making her own mind up, and was never going to stand for that.
Initially, he would have been love-bombing her, he would have been making her feel like the most important person in the world, he would have been showering her with his own vulnerabilities so that she feels that she has to reach in and make him feel better about himself. And then, as time goes on, in those early days, he starts to become more controlling.
Some offenders will be really jealous of their partner, even talking to their mum or dad or cousin. And that's that sense of entitlement, that sense of ownership and owning that person. And they can easily start to erode the relationships with their friends as well by being difficult, tricky, not pleasant to be around. And these are tactics that offenders use to try and isolate the victim, which then means they have more control.
Molly's family are worried about Stimpson's behaviour towards their daughter.
He's at a family party, and during this family argument, he actually goes upstairs to the bathroom and he's video recording Molly, who's obviously distressed because this is an argument she didn't want. The mother comes up, walks in, and he's trying to show the video footage as if to say, look at what's wrong with Molly, look at what the problem is with Molly. So very early on, these kind of coercive control aspects to their relationship are occurring.
It becomes very difficult for families in this situation when they see things about the person that their daughter or son is seeing who they don't like, and they will have concerns. Obviously, as a parent as well, you look and you think, well, I have more experience, I can see what that person is like. And so positive intervention from families and friends when they see something they don't like in relationships is hugely important, because it can prevent something going very wrong later on.
And Stimpson's behaviour also causes alarm among Molly's close circle of friends.
They didn't like the way that he would try to exclude them. They didn't like the way that he would seemingly deliberately cause rows, particularly in public, and then storm off with her saying, "You're going to have to come with me." It was the very obsessional, possessive nature that alienated them.
Turning up unannounced when they were in the relationship, not phoning in advance. And then actually when she was studying, he would be there just sitting on her bed. And that's not right, even to the point where he quits his job, which apparently she was extremely angry about. And she's writing her dissertation. She needs to be able to concentrate, and you can't concentrate when you've got someone looking over your shoulder there.
But Molly still wants to give Stimpson every chance to change in the relationship.
When you grow up in a family that's full of love, you want to give things a chance. When you've seen people in your family have successful relationships, you think, well, maybe this is about me being oversensitive, maybe I'm just being negative, maybe it's my mental health issues that are causing the fractures, maybe if I just try harder. So she goes through the motions, even when she knows she doesn't want to be with him.
Finally, Molly confides in her mother about the ongoing problems in her relationship with Stimpson.
Molly had a very close relationship with her mum, and of course, you know, in that kind of relationship, she tells her everything. And mum realises that this is a bad relationship for her to be in, and so intervenes, suggests to Molly that she shouldn't be in this relationship anymore. So, you know, Molly takes it upon herself to end the relationship because she listens to her friends, she listens to her mum, and of course, she's bright enough herself to understand that this is very unhealthy for her.
Molly works up the courage to end the relationship and tells Stimpson it's over between them.
Molly just said, "That's it, I've had enough." Stimpson begged and pleaded and implored, "Take me back, we can try this again." But there were just too many incidents and too many times when he was trying to belittle her and demean her, and particularly his approach when she was with her friends in public.
Stimpson has one last opportunity to win Molly back.
But then there is a holiday that they've booked, and they've booked it early on in the relationship. So the consequence is, do I stay or do I go? Do I remain at home or do I chance that holiday?
Molly did go on that holiday to see if it was going to work, and it was essentially make or break. And she knew really quickly into that holiday that it was not right and that he was not hearing her.
The problem was, instead of just saying it's over, I think Molly wanted to help him as a friend because of their mutual background of mental issues in the past, when often it's much quicker to have a clean break.
It's a mistake. It's awful from the moment that they get there, and she's actually letting people know what an unhappy time that she's having. So when she comes home, that's when she makes the final decision. I've given it my best shot, it's over, and I want you to leave peacefully. And we have to remember that that was Molly's mindset all the way through. She just wanted the relationship to end.
Molly's mind is now firmly made up. She wants Stimpson out of her life as soon as possible.
When she comes back from the holiday and she ends the relationship, it takes a small amount of time before he realises this time it's serious, because there have been other times where they have essentially returned to the relationship. So he's probably thinking, I just need to push harder. The minute, and it doesn't take long for him to realise that he's not getting his own way, he's angry, he's rageful, he's scared because she's a beautiful young girl. He knows that other people are going to be interested. So as opposed to accepting the breakdown in the relationship, he starts to get nasty.
When Molly breaks up with Joshua Stimpson, his personality becomes even more worrying as he bombards her with texts, begging her to take him back. And we're talking hundreds and hundreds of texts.
Stimpson was able to find out the passwords to her social media sites, which gave him, full access, and he was able to plunder them and plant most malicious and wicked lies.
He starts to get nasty. He starts to send Facebook messages to people that she knows. He starts to suggest that she's taking drugs, which is very upsetting for somebody who's studying a particular area of health and fitness and wants to be an inspiration to other people.
He takes over her Facebook profile, suggesting on the Facebook, where obviously she's got loads and loads of friends who follow her, that she takes cocaine, and very worrying and very upsetting for Molly at the time. And of course now he is becoming a very, very dangerous individual towards Molly.
Basically, he makes her aware that anywhere you go, I'm going to know about that. And I'm going to break every boundary that's set in society and breach them so that you don't feel safe.
Her mum says she knew everything about her, so when he started posting things on social media about her taking drugs and things like that, the mum knew immediately, I know my daughter better than that.
Stimpson's efforts to discredit and embarrass Molly have turned her world upside down, but things are about to get much worse for the 23-year-old university student. Kent, England, 2017. 23-year-old university student Molly McLaren has ended her relationship with 26-year-old double-glazing salesman Joshua Stimpson after he became increasingly abusive and controlling towards her. Stimpson has taken the breakup badly and has now begun a vicious online smear campaign against Molly. He hacks into Molly's social media accounts and posts derogatory photos and messages about her online, all visible to friends, family, and followers.
The one thing that we have in our world is our privacy and our security around our personal items of technology. The idea that somebody can actually spy on us when we're in our very private moments, that makes every area of our world totally unsafe.
Molly starts to suspect that Stimpson has gained full access to her personal messaging accounts and is now stalking her movements.
She felt that he was invading that privacy, he was violating her rights in that way. She didn't know how, but she could tell that he knew things about her, or he found out things about where she was going that she hadn't put online unless it was in a private situation.
Molly's family and friends urge her to go to the police.
Molly wants the police to take down all these things that Joshua Stimpson has said about her on Facebook so that she can get back to her normal life. But she's very, very worried that he's going to come to her house and harm her.
Molly went to the police twice. The first time laid out all this campaign of harassment and stalking, and the police did phone up Stimpson and gave him a serious warning. And his reaction was, well, I have done nothing wrong. And if you think I have, well, you haven't seen anything yet.
If the police warn someone like Joshua Stimpson to say, stop what you're doing, and they don't, that's a red flag for the police there. If they can start to build a case against that person, they will. But it has to be, looked at all the time. The bombardment of text messages, the trying to go into the friendship group to try and gain access to the person that you want to.
But Stimpson ignores the police warnings and continues his abusive online behavior towards Molly.
Needless to say, within a matter of weeks, he was at it again. He completely ignored all their warnings. He continued the stalking, continued the harassment, and it was getting worse and worse. So she went again.
I genuinely think the police struggle where stalking is concerned and where jealousy is concerned. When you have young people with intense relationships saying, this person won't leave me alone, they're getting involved with attacking me online, they feel often that this is just a case of young lovers struggling. And unfortunately, that bias means that they fail to understand the gravity of the actions of certain people.
Increasingly concerned about Stimpson's erratic and unpredictable behavior, Molly even approaches social media companies in a bid to prevent his breaking into her online accounts.
There are different ways in which you can try and take these images down. You can contact Facebook and show that this is not you and your account has been compromised, and they can help you through that process and try and get all these things taken down. But we know how difficult that can be on social media, as somebody can have something taken down in 1 minute and create a new profile the next.
Even Facebook, who they had been in touch with as a family and said, this guy is putting the most grotesque stuff about me on there. They took the stuff down initially, but then when it went back up, they were like, oh, well, we can't really do anything about it. And there is a nonchalance when it comes down to these kind of experiences for lots of young people.
Molly attempts to continue her life, despite the campaign of harassment against her.
It can be quite dangerous to block them completely. The advice is to ensure you keep one route of comms open. You don't reply to them. You've already said, do not contact me, but keeping one route of comms where they think they're getting to you, A, it keeps the evidence, but B, it can prevent the escalation. Now, the escalation starts when they are completely blocked and they can't get to that victim. So they're more likely to just try and turn up.
One evening, Molly is at a pub with her friends, and Joshua Stimpson has arrived with this other girl. And of course, at that point, Molly is probably thinking, well, maybe he's moved on, maybe he'll leave me alone. But of course, that's not the case. This was just another way for Joshua Stimpson to be with Molly.
Very confusing for Molly. Does he know that I'm at this pub tonight? I've told all of my friends. They've turned all of their social media off and blocked him.
Now, he walks in with another girl, and that could be because he's thinking, I'll make her jealous. Even if he's hoping to achieve jealousy on her side, all she feels is relief. Of course she does. You're thinking to yourself, let him have moved on. Let somebody else have this problem. What really counts is he's giving her a very powerful message, and that is, no matter where you go, no matter who you're with, I'm going to be there. It's about alerting her to the knowledge that he is everywhere, literally like an omnipotent force in her world in this moment.
Molly is uncomfortable with the sudden appearance of Stimpson in the bar and decides to leave early.
She's probably thinking for the first time, dare I hope, dare I believe that maybe this situation is going to change and I am going to be free of him.
But unbeknownst to Molly, things had just taken a pivotal and tragic turn.
Unbeknown to her, there were two very serious developments. Number one, as she drove home, she was being followed by Stimpson in his own car. And secondly, Stimpson had joined her gym.
Molly is a member of Pure Gym, which is near the River Medway, right by the docks in Chatham.
And it's here that Molly travels to for her morning workout session the next morning. It's Thursday, June 29th, 2017.
She's not feeling super positive that everything's going to be all right with Stimpson. She's still nervous, but ultimately she's moving forward with her life. She goes to the Pure Gym. She starts exercising.
Behind her, in his car, was Stimpson. He drew into the car park. He's caught on CCTV on the stairwell, going up, thinking, coming down, going up, coming down, clearly going over in his mind, am I going to do it? And eventually he thinks, clearly, now, that's it. It's now or never. And he marches into the gym.
All of a sudden, Joshua Stimpson has appeared next to her as she's working out in the gym. This again is an escalation in his behaviour, which must have frightened Molly.
And you instantly see the power play, because he goes to exactly where she is. Bearing in mind, he's empty, and yet he places himself next to her.
He lays out his mat just 5 feet away from Molly. She turns to him and says, what are you doing here? You're following me. And is now very scared.
She's messaging her mum and telling her mum, you'll never guess what, he's appeared next to me.
Her mum immediately does the right thing and says, come home. I don't want you there.
He then leaves and goes to his car in a car park. This car park is full of cars. It's a Thursday, it's in the middle of the day. There's lots and lots of people going to a local shopping centre there. And he drives around the car park, laying in wait for Molly to come out.
She's totally unsuspecting. As far as she's concerned, he's gone. And arguably, she leaves thinking, hopefully he's got the message.
At that time, Molly is completely unaware that after Joshua Stimpson left Pure Gym, he is waiting for her.
So she packs up her gym kit, heads to the car, opens the door, sits behind the wheel. The next second, the passenger door flies open.
He yanks the car door open and begins a brutal and vicious attack where he stabs Molly 75 times.
And he strikes with such a degree that I think it's hard for people to really compute.
One bystander sees the commotion taking place in Molly's car and tries to intervene.
One very brave man could see what he thought was a couple arguing in the car until he realised that there was something in the man's hand. And he then raced over, he banged on the bonnet, went over to the passenger door side, slammed the door against Stimpson's leg to try and distract him.
That bystander, seeing the terrible events unfold in front of him, tried to stop Joshua Stimpson from attacking Molly to try and prevent what was an awful attack.
Stimpson emerges from Molly's car and walks around with a blood-soaked knife in his hand.
This is in broad daylight, 11 o'clock in the morning, in a public car park. There are witnesses all over.
Stimpson doesn't care about what happens next. Stimpson's sending a message to her in the world. No one has the right to control me or leave me. And I'll ultimately make sure that anybody who does pays the price with their life.
Emergency services receive numerous 999 calls about the incident, and police and paramedics quickly rush to the scene.
Police obviously have to, firstly, detain him as quickly as possible. But what they also want to do is get to Molly as quickly as possible to see if there is any way in which they can save her life.
Stimpson is taken into custody by police without a struggle.
They have to take Stimpson away and immediately have him medically examined because he seemed in some sort of catatonic state, that is, staring eyes and covered in blood.
For the officers, seeing somebody that has been attacked in that way would have been, very, very difficult to see as well. But they have a job to do and they tried their best along with the paramedics and ambulance crews that arrived at the same time to try and save her life.
The paramedics arriving at the shopping centre spend precious minutes attempting to stabilise Molly. But tragically, she is pronounced dead at the scene. Police try and locate Molly's family to inform them as quickly as possible.
Social media travels really fast. Her family were finding out about a killing online before they were actually informed by the police. Also, her father at the time was working on an oil rig, so the consequence of that was that he had to be informed by his wife that he would never see his daughter again.
Police now begin their criminal investigation to piece together the sequence of events leading up to that tragic morning in the car park in Chatham.
When an incident like this happens where somebody has been murdered, lots and lots of procedures kick in. The crime scene itself will be cordoned off. They want to get all the forensic evidence they can, the car in which she's in, the CCTV that might capture the incident. And of course then he will be questioned about what he's done.
June 2017, Kent, England. 23-year-old university student and fitness blogger Molly McLaren has been murdered in her car in broad daylight by a jealous ex-boyfriend. Joshua Stimpson, a 26-year-old double glazing salesman, is arrested at the scene after making no attempt to flee the area. Police now launch a full-scale murder investigation into the brutal and senseless killing.
They have to establish who is the victim, who is the suspect, what was their relationship.
His movements before and during the attack itself. They'll be going to his home addresses, they'll be going to other places, maybe checking on previous girlfriends to make sure that there are no other victims. Joshua Stimpson himself is brought into custody. He is himself a forensic crime scene and they want to take swabs off him. They'll be trying to take clothing and everything else that they can find out about him, taking any digital phones and computers, something where they can show the evidence and the way in which this is built up. They'll have Molly's side of all the phone calls and the text messages, but they want to see evidence from his side as well.
Investigators delve into Stimpson's past relationships and quickly uncover a pattern of abusive behaviour against two of his previous girlfriends.
Both were victims of coercive control. Both were victims of very abusive behaviour, including being spat at and treated very reprehensibly.
Stimson had spat drink in her face in a pub in front of all her friends. Another one told how she'd been on holiday, and she received messages from Stimson saying, "I'm going to come over to where you are and drown you."
Stimson is charged with the murder of Molly McLaren and is remanded in custody pending trial. For Molly's family, the sudden loss of their daughter in such tragic circumstances leaves them heartbroken.
The family were absolutely distraught at what had happened, involving a man they knew to be dangerously, almost psychotic, and a threat to their daughter, and that this was a horrendous consequence of months of stalking and harassment.
A hugely important role is the family liaison officer, the person that is put essentially into that family and will be there from day one right the way through the court process, and quite often a long time afterwards, supporting the family. Part of their role is to gain evidence as well. You know, things that the family will tell them might be evidence they don't realise. So of course, when you look at Joshua Stimpson's relationship with Molly, you see things that the family can help with, things that friends can also give evidence about.
Investigators continue building their case against Stimpson leading up to his trial.
The police that become involved in this particular investigation will be homicide detectives, led by senior officers dealing with exhibits at the scenes, the digital information and evidence that is gathered from phones and computers. When you collect all that together with your crime scene forensics and your CCTV, that's when you're building your case, ready to say, right, we have enough to charge Joshua Stimpson with murder.
Stimpson goes on trial for the murder of Molly McLaren at Maidstone Crown Court in February 2018.
The trial starts and Joshua Stimpson pleads not guilty. And when you think that all the evidence that the police have against him, witnesses who saw it was him, the forensics is covered in Molly's blood, you'd think that, why are we going through a trial? It's the worst thing to put a family through in that particular situation, where they're going to have to listen to every part of that evidence and witness statements and the medical evidence of what happened.
Stimpson, when he was in court, was really emotionless. That was one of the things that I think her family struggled with. We're talking about such an emotionally turbulent time for them, and they're looking at the perpetrator who's literally stolen the life of somebody they love more than anything in the world, and he just is non-reactive.
He then, through the trial, pleads guilty to manslaughter. And this is on the suggestion that he wasn't in control of his capacity, the mental health that had caused him to do it.
His lawyers claimed that he was suffering from a bipolar disorder since his childhood, which created such an unbalanced personality disorder that he could not be held responsible for the crimes that he had committed.
The argument is that he was abandoned by his mother, and the abandonment by his mother fractured him to such a degree that he felt totally fearful of anybody else ever leaving him. We can feel sorry for anybody who's been through an abandonment level, but if we were really to argue that a parent leaving is enough to make us wish to kill somebody, well, there would be a lot of people turning up dead. It's as simple as that.
Prosecutors present CCTV footage in court of Stimpson purchasing a knife and other tools in the days leading up to the attack.
They find out that he's bought knives and pickaxes and things like that in other places close by.
We understand that people do at times lose their sense of reality. They have psychotic breaks, for example, but these happen in moments. They don't happen over 2 days where you're able to coldly go and buy the weapons that you're going to use and to plan the execution of the person that you want dead. So they were able to build their case around his actions. He provided them with all the evidence that they needed. This wasn't somebody who was out of their mind. This was somebody who was highly in control. Just as he had been highly in control in Molly's life, he was highly in control in Molly's death.
The prosecution had a very strong hand, not just with Stimpson's actions in his relationship with Molly, but his actions in his relationship with previous girlfriends. And two came to court to tell exactly how badly they had been treated, which reflected so much of the relationship issues that he'd had with Molly.
The trial concludes and the jury quickly reach a verdict.
The jury spent very little time, barely an hour, to return a verdict of guilty to murder.
Nobody bought into this belief that he was struggling with his mental health to a point where he had lost his mind. In fact, they recognised that this was a cool, calm execution on his part and that he wanted Molly dead.
The judge gave Joshua Stimpson a life sentence with a minimum term of 26 years. And in this particular case, because Joshua Stimpson was so dangerous, and as the judge said, posed a huge risk to women and girls, that the 26 years is what he will serve. That will be the first day that he can even be considered for parole. And of course, if he doesn't behave himself in prison, or they assess that his dangerousness still exists, then he can remain in prison well past that 26-year date.
Stimpson wasn't out of control. There was nothing out of control about him. He knew what he wanted to achieve and he achieved it very effectively. And for a period of time before that, he executed that plan judiciously.
Molly's family are relieved at the guilty verdict and long sentencing for Stimpson.
There was an exhilaration at the guilty verdict, even though, as the family made clear, you couldn't possibly bring Molly back. Their lives were still destroyed.
People might think, could Molly have done anything more? And really, no, not really, because Joshua Stimpson already had that personality, that coercive and controlling, that bullying, that narcissistic personality. And when he met Molly and started that relationship, and she could see these red flags, and her family and friends could see the red flags appearing about his behaviour, she's done what she needed to do, and she wanted him to go away. But he didn't want her to be with anybody else. When you are up against someone like him, unfortunately, it's very, very difficult for it all to end peacefully and amicably.
Molly was somebody who would have benefited this world greatly. Every human being arrives with potential, but she was somebody who didn't just recognise that potential, she was working on it so that she could help not only herself, but other people too. She came from a loving family. She would have had a future full of support and care. She would have no doubt had a family of her own that would have thrived because of her being the parent. And she should, to all intents and purposes, have carried on making an incredible mark in this world.
Following Molly's death, her parents set up the Molly McLaren Foundation to raise awareness and provide support for people affected by eating disorders.
Molly's parents tried to make a positive out of this terrible tragedy and set up the Molly McLaren Foundation.
And they raised a lot of money to help other people who struggled with eating disorders. So young people who themselves were affected with their mental health or were struggling with their self-image, this offered them support and help and advocacy. And that's very powerful because it speaks of wanting to make sure that long after the perpetrator is put away, the actual thing that matters remains, which is the human being whose life was stolen.
In October 2018, the University of Kent acknowledges Molly's achievements during her lifetime by posthumously awarding her an undergraduate diploma in sports and exercise for health.
They attended a degree ceremony at the University of Kent where they received, on behalf of Molly, her posthumous degree. And as they reached the dais and was presented with the scroll, the whole assembly rose as one, gave her a riotous standing ovation to reflect the love for Molly and the tragedy that had unfolded.
The legacy of the support her parents have created for others and the university marking her academic prowess, that's meant a great deal.